It's all your fault, you know." I was shocked to the core by these tender words of my beloved wife, with whom I lived for just over 5 years. We lay huddled together, me behind her, in a warm embrace. I felt very relaxed, vulnerable, and ready to fall asleep after some very passionate lovemaking. My wife, Kathy, was the initiator, which is rare. She was very animated and seemed determined to kill me with kindness, which is rare. It was definitely a case for the record books. I never questioned good things, but apparently even I should have been wary. The peeper needs to be paid. Eh? What? What have I done? Those were the only words I could squeeze out of my mostly shut-down brain, which had gone into full defense mode. This is exactly what we guys do when we confront our spouses. We go into full defensive mode, knowing that we did something wrong and will pay for it, even if we have no idea what exactly we did. Now I was tense, but I didn't dare move, waiting for revelations about what and how much I would have to pay. I felt a slight push in my ribs from a woman's elbow. Not too much, just for effect. Almost playfully, one might say. "It's all your damn fault." According to the schedule, the plan was to be in full force. Now we would be in divorce court, and I would be on the way to a completely prosperous single life. I also had to be on the lookout for husband number 2. Now I'm awake. "What are you talking about? What's the plan? You are crazy? Your words don't make any sense." My voice grew in volume and pitch, turning into a terrible male version of whininess. I rarely swore at Katie, but here I was, cursing and whining at the same time. She turned to face me as I lay leaning on my elbow. She crossed her soft leg over mine and ran her index finger over my lips. She started whispering to me, "Shh, shh, baby, do not yell at me. Everything is fine. Just relax." I had something to tell you and I didn't know how to say it, so I just blurted it out. "Relax. Relax." She took a deep breath. "For the last month or so, I was a real bore to you until I went to my mother and sisters. I know it. Subconsciously, this was part of my exit strategy." Exit strategies? I felt myself tense up again. "Just relax. Soon you will understand everything." So, I went on my little trip to meet my relatives, and first, as you know, I visited my mother. Not only did I get to see her, but I also received a little support and advice on how to implement the plan. What I didn't count on was to see her in her element and observe her life a little. She lives in a wonderful house and has some very cool cars. My favorite is a Maserati. She has young boy toys to play with and seems to have everything a woman could want if you love money and the trappings of wealth. She achieved all this by developing and following the plan, a term she herself coined. The plan is to just find some guy, marry him and be married for about 5 years. Then you divorce him, receive half of the property, and move on to the next husband, and everything repeats all over again. My mother has been married 7 times already. She has 3 daughters from 3 different husbands. She is now divorced, according to her, for the last time and lives very luxuriously. She told me it was time for me to move on with my life and gave me a list of things I should definitely do and ask for during the divorce. You know, negotiation tips. You didn't know it, but you were going to be hung out to dry. This told me a lot. I always wondered why my wife never invited me to visit her mother or her sisters, like she was ashamed of me or something. In my mind, they were man-hating bitches, and I was just a fly in their soup. It seemed like being kept out of family get-togethers was a good thing, but it still didn't calm my growing fear that this wouldn't end well. The fact that she told me about this was a small glimmer of hope. Since bailiffs don't usually show up in your bedroom at night to serve you with divorce papers, it didn't make sense that she was going to give me a surprise gotcha statement right now. Katie continued, "With renewed determination and even more ammunition, I went to my older sister, Janine. She seems to be doing well. She just married husband number 3 and is living quite luxuriously. I met Trent, her new husband. He seemed quite normal to me, but overall, he was quite boring and constantly looked askance at me. Janine said that he works as a sales representative and is often away, which suits her just fine because he is quite boring in bed. She said she couldn't wait for these 5 years to be over. She spoke with some fondness of her first husband, Tim, who she said was a fantastic lover and generally a good man. As far as she knows, he has remarried, has 2 children, and seems quite happy. She recently met him, and at least they can talk now because he doesn't get hurt or angry anymore. But I highly doubt they will ever become friends. It's very sad. I always liked Tim and thought he was right for her. I never dated husband number 2. Janine only married him because he was rich. Overall, I think he treated her pretty badly. I left Janine with some doubts, but not enough to undo the first step of the plan. Janine also gave me some tips on finding a good lawyer to handle our divorce and some questions to ask to make sure the lawyer is completely on board with what needs to be done to get the best out of you. I was starting to get angry. The woman I loved and adored nonchalantly told me her plans, how she was going to destroy me, not only financially, but also emotionally. Katie took a deep breath and calmed me down. Almost finished, hold on. You can speak in another minute. Then I visited Cheryl. She and I had a great time because we were very close when we were young. She was married to Kyle for almost 6 years and divorced him 2 years ago. I told her that I had just arrived from my mother and Janine's, and she asked how they were doing. She also asked, which I found a little strange, if they looked happy. I thought about it and replied that my mother seemed pleased, but still felt bitter when she mentioned the ex-men in her life. Cheryl said that she is sure that Janine's father really put a mark on her mother, and partly on Janine, to make them both hate men the way they do. For me, it was a kind of revelation. This went some way to explaining why Mom came up with the plan in the first place, and why she preached it to us constantly as we grew up. It was a secret we kept from our husbands that bound us into a sisterhood. We have always been involved in plans to appease the current husband and stall until his 5-year sentence was over, and then seemed to push him out of our minds and hearts. It seemed like Cheryl and I could even do this to our own fathers, to whom we both felt close. We, or at least I, really believed that all families did this until I got older and had friends whose father was the father of all the children and was still part of the family. It's funny how we thought all this crap was normal. Cheryl and I talked a lot about our fathers. She is very close to her father, and I adore my father, as you well know. My dad, at least, is still very hurt and wondering how my mom could just divorce him and kick him out. I think he needs answers. I'm sure he's still wondering what he did to his mom to push her away. Poor guy still doesn't know what to do. I may have to figure out how to tell him this without alienating my mom. I have to work on this. Anyway, when Cheryl and I were talking, I told her that I was getting ready to start my version of the plan, and she had a very sad look on her face. Then she sighed heavily. She told me that divorcing Kyle was the worst mistake of her life. She said that he loved her and treated her very well, and she, in turn, loved and cared for him. They were partners and friends, and she hates that she gave in to pressure from her mom and Janine to follow the plan. With tears in her eyes, she said that the man who once adored her now hated her to the core and did not even want to talk to her. She tried to contact him, but he got a restraining order against her. She started dating again, but is looking for another Kyle that she can't find. She then looked at me intently and asked if I was happily married. I had to admit that yes. I thought a little more and realized that I was very, very happy, and it would be difficult for me to replace you. Besides, for the first time I thought about what you would think and feel if I just divorced you. How can I do this to you? I'm ashamed to admit, but such a thought had never even crossed my mind before. How stupid is this? I just looked, I'm sure with a fair amount of horror, at my Katie, horrified that this woman I loved could think in such terms, without regard for me and my feelings, for the entire time we were together. Shocked that she even talks about this as if it were some random event. Angry that other people outside of our life together could have such influence over her that they encouraged her to break up with us without regard for our feelings, and this was part of her deeply ingrained belief system. I was also hurt and upset that this could be the end of us. I felt helpless, angry, and on the verge of tears. Katie just looked at me with tears in her eyes. I know, baby, and I'm so sorry. I know this all sounds so crazy. It sounds crazy even to me now that I've had a chance to think about it all. Katie stroked my cheek and pulled my head towards her to kiss me. A soft kiss of hope and gratitude. And then she whispered to me in a hoarse, emotion-filled voice. I understood right away. I knew without a doubt that I could never let you go. I can't divorce you because of some stupid plan that arose because my mother was hurt many years ago. I love you too much. I will never ever be able to find anyone else who makes me feel the way you can and loves me the way you keep proving to me. I'm afraid you're stuck with me. Unless, of course, you realize that I'm too crazy to live with and decide to carry out the plan yourself. The ball is now in your court. You have to make a decision. I already called my mom and sisters and told them that the plan is no longer part of my plans and my life. She released her grip on my dick and wrapped her arms around my neck, pulling me into a loving embrace and kissing me passionately on the lips. I'm yours until you can't stand me anymore. All doubt and anger disappeared the second she said those words. I was sure. I felt relieved. I was in love. We made love again with more passion and intensity than we had probably done since our honeymoon. Two people confirmed their love and commitment to each other in a way that only happens when they both feel and believe it to the core. We were hugging again in the same position as before her confession, when she whispered, "Now that we're stuck with each other, maybe we should talk about those kids you kept hinting about." I stood next to the hospital bed on which lay the frail, cancer-stricken body of Kathy, my wife for 62 years, that had passed far too quickly. I held her hand, desperately trying to stay on my feet. At the opposite end of the room from the bed sat our 4 children, their spouses, and several of our older grandchildren. Our 12-year-old granddaughter Jenny looked at me intently and asked, "What were you thinking, Poppy?" The perceptive little girl always seemed to know when my thoughts were far away. "I was thinking about the time when I knew for sure that your grandmother really loved me." I smiled at the memories, but I felt bad from the realization that our life together would soon end. Katie's suffering will soon end, and I will only have to wait my turn. I felt a light touch on my hand. Katie's eyes were open and clear, and her breathing became even and calm for the first time in days. I felt that she wanted me to come closer to her. I leaned over and she kissed me impulsively with dry lips. She tried to speak, and her voice was strained and raspy. "I've had a wonderful life, my love." Her big brown eyes sparkled warmly. "It's all your fault, you know. Subscribe to our